There's 10 players you'll regret not at least trying to trade for before week 4 because their price is about to skyrocket. But if this is your first time here, I'm Joe. I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy leagues over the last decade, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. I start off every video by delivering some value and getting you guys involved, and then I go into today's one key topic. So feel free to skip ahead, but let's get right into it. Let's jump right into today's news and why it matters for fantasy football. Tyrone Tracy is expected to miss a few weeks with a shoulder injury. Obviously, this is great news for Skattebo owners, and he last week 16 touches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. So in general, with this offense changing hands at the quarterback position, Tyrone Tracy is not going to be in the way from, for Skattebo owners, and I think this going forward could lead to just more touches for Skattebo overall. So that's something that is definitely positive and definitely is something that could change things from a fantasy perspective. And then, buried the lead, but Jackson Dart will be starting for the remainder of the season for the Giants. So despite what happens in this first start, obviously they still have a pretty tough couple of matchups coming up before things open up a little bit. Jackson Dart, mobile quarterback, strong arm. Obviously he was great in the preseason. So I do think he's a guy that we could consider picking up in like deeper one quarterback leagues, certainly super flex. It's a really good add. Obviously Russell Wilson, we'll see what happens with the rest of his just career in general, but he hasn't been able to get it done from a wins perspective so far this year for the Giants. So at some point, we all kind of knew that we were going to see Jackson Dart some point this season, but it's going to be sooner rather than later. Mike Evans, hamstring injury expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks. They are calling it a low-grade hamstring issue in comparison to last year when it was obviously a little bit more severe. So hopefully he can get out as soon as possible, get back out there. Obviously, it's going to boost guys like Emeka Egbuka, Sterling Shepard, but the other piece of news is Chris Godwin has been seen participating in Bucs practices. So that ankle does seem to be coming along. If Chris Godwin comes back, obviously he'll be able to soak up some of that target share that they're losing with Evans. Trey Benson, we talked about it a little bit on the last video, but obviously we're losing James Conner to a season-ending Achilles injury. It seems like the Cardinals are fully confident in Trey Benson kind of handling that load the rest of the way. 4.340, obviously he's got great speed, great usage in the passing game. I wouldn't be surprised if they lean in pretty heavily to a pretty similar role to what Connor had. So he's obviously going to be a massive factor in fantasy football the rest of the way. Hopefully you're able to get him on waivers. Also think he's an interesting trade target. So we'll keep going through that. Terry McLaurin, additional opinions on his injured quad. Always scares me a little bit when guys are trying to get a second opinion. Normally that's not a good thing. But if he's not able to go, obviously there's some injuries for this Washington team in general. Maybe we get a little bit more of Luke McCaffrey, but it does seem like he's very much in doubt for week 4 against the Falcons. We'll keep an eye on Terry McLaurin. Zach Charbonnet, that foot injury, he is estimated as a full participant Tuesday's practice. Obviously it was just a walkthrough, but they are expecting Charbonnet to be back this week. So that Kenneth Walker explosion with no Charbonnet last week, it might be a little bit tougher for us to get behind him in that way this week with Charbonnet back. Xavier Worthy does look like they're optimistic that he will be back with that shoulder injury. Kind of a limited role is what it sounds like. He's going to be wearing a small harness. It feels a little bit more like he might be a decoy in the very beginning, but the guy that this affects the most is Tyquan Thornton. You might get one more week out of him as kind of like a spot starter for the cheap Steve threat. JJ McCarthy looks like they won't be they won't be throwing him back into the fire until he's fully healthy with that ankle injury. Vikings are going overseas for the next 2 games, and then they have their bye. So it's going to be the Carson Wentz experience over there. We'll see if JJ McCarthy gets another shot after the bye in week 7. All right, just want to quickly highlight some quick comments and questions from the last video. Joe, thanks to you, I had both Jordan Mason and Trey Benson on my bench. Let's go, my man, and appreciate the insights. Appreciate you guys. Also want to remind you guys that the first ever Start Sit live stream on Sunday morning will be going down 10:15 Eastern time is when we're going to be doing that. I do my DraftKings show position by position at 9 a.m. Eastern time every Sunday morning, but we're going to do kind of an Ask Me Anything fantasy football start sit live stream this Sunday. So make sure you guys come hang out with us then. I'll try and answer all of the trade targets stuff then as well, but start sits for sure. Thoughts on trading Odunze for Marvin Harrison Jr., wondering if Harrison gets back to form. Yeah, I'm not that optimistic on Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't have a ton of shares in season long right now, But he looks absolutely lost. A couple of those balls hitting him on the hands almost has the yips a little bit, which is a little bit scary. And Odunze looks like the clear number one for Caleb Williams and Chicago. So yeah, I would absolutely not be trading away Odunze for Marvin Harrison Jr. Would you trade away Josh Jacobs to get Derrick Henry? I think I would. Yeah. Obviously, the fumbles have been an issue for Derrick Henry, but nothing's really changed. I think that he's still going to be scoring a ton of touchdowns this year, and obviously a team that's going to be scoring a lot, and he's just not facing as many loaded boxes. There's just so much to like for Derrick Henry. I think Josh Jacobs obviously has a great role for the Packers, and the Packers are going to be one of the best teams in the league this year for sure. I think I still give the slight edge to Derrick Henry, though. Should I trade Jamar Chase for Bucky Irving and Rashee Rice? This one made me think more than maybe it should have. I think that Rashee Rice is someone that if you can trade for Rashee Rice in your league, I think he's going to go absolutely crazy once he gets back. The Chiefs desperately need him. And Bucky Irving is someone that, again, there's so many injuries in Tampa Bay right now, including on that offensive line, I'm not really targeting. So I wouldn't do this trade personally. But moving Jamar Chase for this type of 2-for-1, depending on where your team's at. If you're 0-3, or if you're 1-2, I do think trading Jamar Chase for like two really solid starters is at least something you should be entertaining right now. Sorry, not trading Ricky Pearsall, period. Did you watch the game? He's going off the rest of the season. Appreciate the opinions, my man. Always open to the disagreements, obviously. But I would say that Ricky Pearsall, to me, though he might end up being one of the more talented guys on their team, I just think they're going to get healthy. And when they get healthy fast, there's just going to be less targets to go around. The problem with this San Francisco offense in general, typically, is that it ends up being a really high efficiency spot and not as much like condensed volume to go around, especially if we get AU Kittle back, Pearsall. He's just not going to see as much volume as he's seeing right now, right? So I like to follow the volume, not necessarily the efficiency in these type of situations. Going to test out a new format today instead of just doing the whiteboarding that we normally do. And we're talking through 10 players about to explode in fantasy football, 5 wide receivers, 5 running backs. We're going to start with running backs today with TreVeyon Henderson. So obviously the backfield trust is what has just broken wide open. Ramondre Stevenson, Gibson lost 3 fumbles in week 3. Henderson's touches jumped to a season high 14. So the offense having 5 total turnovers, that's exactly the kind of game that prompts a role reassessment on who's getting the ball. So Panthers up next. They just obviously got run all over by Bijan Robinson, 111 total yards. We'll see if Henderson and his snap share can rise. And the receiving floor that you can actually count on. So he's caught every single target so far. He's 11 for 11 across the first 3 weeks. So I think that the PPR floor that you get from him and just the standalone value is really strong. McDaniels likes to throw the ball. New England finished 11th in neutral pace under Drake May. So more plays, more easy running back catches. And I think we can probably project him at this point for like kind of like a James White-esque type of role for the Patriots. So I really like that. And then the thing that we keep talking about with TreVeyon Henderson is the draft capital, the explosiveness, and really just the clear path to ascension. The team was absolutely ecstatic after taking him in round 2. Multiple reports say that that we shouldn't be surprised if he becomes the lead option. I think we talked through that quite a bit. Ramondre led all running backs in fumbles. And really what we were talking about all offseason is just the lack of explosiveness there. So Henderson fixes that problem quite a bit. So I like it. I think he's closer to like a Gibbs Etienne as far as like a per touch playmaker than people give him credit for. So to me, is week 4 like our last chance, like the last cheap chance to grab him? And I think that it might be, honestly, with Carolina coming up next. Obviously, it's a really soft matchup. So I'm buying him now before the roll and the price pops. Trey Benson, not just to pick up. And I realized after reading some of the comments too that a lot of people weren't able to pick up Trey Benson. He was available in like half of leagues out there. But if you weren't able to get him, I still think he's an interesting trade target. So let's talk about that. Obviously, lead back is something that's unlocked here with Connor and that season-ending injury. We don't need to spend too much longer on this. I know we've talked about it at length, but in general, I think he's a guy. He's got 4.3 speed. He's someone that they were talking up all offseason. So I would be not shocked if they give him basically the keys out of the gates, and he's someone that can be a bell cow and really a season-winning player for you in fantasy. So the tailwinds are there, and I think that we need to buy him now before he becomes like a guy that you're going to have to give up a lot more for. So I think whoever has him is probably stoked. Doesn't mean that they might not be willing to trade him before we actually see what he's able to do. Next guy, Travis Etienne. So obviously he's the clear RB1 after the Bigsby trade. We've talked about that a decent amount when we talk about Tootin, but the carries are still pretty solid. 16, 14, 16. He's been the lead back in every single game. He's got back-to-back scores, so he's got like that two-way usage. And I think that the explosion that we saw in week 1, 143 rushing yards on 16 attempts, we know there's a ceiling there, right? So, and in Cohen's scheme, there's going to be a lot of running back fuel here that we're going to need. So yeah, we like Tootin, but I think that in general, Etienne is also another guy that I'm trying to trade for currently. And a lot of that has to do with the projected snaps of this offense. And I think that the offensive line being one of the worst in the league is actually a net positive for the passing game, or the passing side of both of these running backs. And I think that if you're going to basically be waiting to trade for him, you still might miss the boat on it, essentially. J.K. Dobbins, lead back, 3-week touchdown streak. So, of course, I still like R.J. Harvey, all the hype from the offseason. I still stand behind that he could have a bigger role as the season goes on, but there's been no doubt about it. So far, Dobbins has been the top back. The fact remains that they have an elite offensive line. The scheme is something that is extremely running back friendly, and I think that the team touchdowns is something that we have to continue to project highly for Dobbins because this team's going to score a lot of touchdowns. If Bo Nix starts to be even a little bit better, obviously he's started the season not great. I think that this is one that I wish I would have had more of in season long and best ball for sure. So think of it almost like Javonte Williams with like a little bit more juice. I think that the trusted goal line back for a really good team is something that we're always going to have a little bit of interest in. So I would trade for J.K. Dobbins now as kind of like that underpriced RB2 with immediate TD ceiling. And I think his role is relatively insulated by the usage and like the elite offensive line play for now. Cam Skattebo. I know we talked about him a little bit as well, but weeks 3, 10 for 60 and 1 rushing. I think that the fact that Tyrone Tracy left this game with that shoulder and didn't return, he's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. That's really just the door opening for Skattebo here. So the coaches are projecting him for obviously a lot of usage in the passing game as well, but the guy just doesn't go down. So I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. And anytime we get 2 rookies together, Jackson Dart, obviously the new starter for the Giants, I think both of these guys could be priorities. And I think that if they continue to just give him those dump offs and let him kind of do damage after contact and after the catch, Cam Skattebo is going to be a guy that you're going to want in PPR leagues, and I think could actually push for RB1 numbers at times this year. So those are my 5 running backs that I'd be trading for: Cam Skattebo, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, Trey Benson, and TreVeyon Henderson. Let's talk wide receivers. So on the thumbnail, we should talk about Brian Thomas Jr. for a second, right? He's seen absolute alpha usage. We've just had really quiet box scores, right? So 25 targets through 3 weeks, but only 7 for 115 and 1. That's really just like a perfect buy low opportunity, in my opinion. He did have a nice 46-yard grab in week 3, so at least we saw a little bit of that field stretching role is at least still alive. Despite the target share, we haven't seen like that big explosion yet. I guess we were talking about Marvin Harrison a little bit as someone I'm bearish on. I'm still bullish on Brian Thomas Jr. If you can catch him for a much cheaper price for an owner in your league that is panicking, I would do that. The Jaguars are projected to run a ton of plays. I guess I'm buying Jaguars this week because I think the ceiling is already on tape for a guy like BTJ. As a rookie, he absolutely exploded. 33.5% target share from weeks 11 to weeks 18. So from a macro perspective, he's still a wide receiver 1 on usage alone. We just need the efficiency to catch up a little bit, and I do think that it will. We need to find, I guess, so we're always looking for elite usage, elite like kind of efficiency and opportunity, right? So NFL's 8th toughest passing schedule. I do think that just in general, as long as the volume continues to consolidate, I'm really just betting on the roll here over just early box scores, if that makes sense. One of my favorite players of all time, if you've been around for a while, Stefon Diggs. So McDaniels, May, that's just going to end up with more plays, more throws in general. So I think basically the season in general, their pass rate is even ahead of what we expected for now. So I think there's just a bigger pie overall for the wide receiver 1 targets in this offense. They really need like a downfield weapon here. I think that Stefon Diggs and kind of his separating ability in the short to intermediate is still something that we really like, but downfield, I don't think he's going to be necessarily that guy. But the usage, again, is what I'm following here. Weeks 1 through 2, or weeks 1 and 2, 12 targets. Still, like, I guess featured, but didn't really have any of the splash plays. So I guess that's a positive and negative. Didn't have enough splash plays, but was still featured with a ton of volume. So yeah, I guess in general, you're going to get a discount, I think, for the volume that you're getting. The profile to me still like screams target magnet. And I think that, like, if you're going to get a guy like this who I guess historically has had really nice efficiency outside, but you're still going to get some more slot usage from him here. I think that I definitely don't think that Diggs is dead. I think he can command a really nice like 20 to 25% target share in certain games as May's top option. And I think that the slow start to me is just a little bit of noise. In week 3, they had a ton of turnovers. So I think the chemistry in general is still building a little bit for here and for Diggs and May. So Panthers in week 4, just like TreVeyon, I think Diggs is someone that's undervalued right now. And we should be trading for him. Chris Olave. Again, this is the natural thing that you're going to see from me this time of year. I'm following usage. I'm following targets. So wide receiver 1 usage, really just the wide receiver 24 overall result so far. So he leads the NFL in targets through 3 games, yet sits as the wide receiver 24. So week 3, 10 for 14, 57 yards, 3 straight games without a TD despite that heavy volume. So that's another opportunity for some room to grow if you're going to trade him. Trade for him. Kellen Moore's offenses, top 8 in plays per game historically, Saint Stroud, the NFL's easiest passing schedule. So there's a lot of headroom here. That's what we're looking for. Talent and role, the points are coming. So I think that Moore is probably going to, like, I guess, bump his slot usage a little bit as well. I think we need to get him some more cleaner first read looks from Rattler. I think we will see that adjustment. So even if we kind of continue to see kind of like leaguing or close to target share, I don't think he's going to remain scoreless much longer. So I'm making a deal for Chris Olave now before the box score catches up the efficiency, but also the touchdowns. And I think he's a little bit undervalued right now at cost. The guy that's been undervalued basically the entire offseason season as well is Jakobi Meyers. So again, wide receiver 1 usage from the jump, 10 and 12 targets in weeks 1 and 2, pacing Las Vegas in targets, receptions, yards both weeks. So 3 straight 60-plus yards games on 26 targets through week 3. So I think the rapport is definitely there with Geno and kind of that short to medium window. I think he has like one of the most stable PPR floors that there is right now. So I'm not necessarily chasing the Trey Tucker spike, though I do think that he's an absolute freak downfield. So if you're able to grab Trey Tucker on the waiver wire, I still think that he's nice, I guess, from like a vertical only spike potential. But the safe option is still Jakobi Meyers. So anytime there's like a flash in an offense, I typically try and find if there's anything there that where nothing has changed, that his value might have gone down a little bit. So I think that's actually Jakobi Meyers here. Really, I think that the split that we're still looking at is post Devontae Adams last year, where he logged a 28.2% target share and was on a crazy stretch towards the end of 2024. So the addition of Geno Smith, Chip Kelly's offense, all of that, I think is going to push the pace faster than usual and boost the pass volume overall. They might have the worst offensive line in the NFL. Ashton Genty has not been good overall. So all of that could just push more usage to Jakobi Meyers. The last guy I'm going to talk about is probably not for everyone. It's probably not an option to try and trade for a guy like this because a lot of people are not going to give him up. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you to go kick the tires on Justin Jefferson. So 62% called pass rate, top 3 PROE last year, and they're still throwing. So obviously, if they dial back the pass volume, even when JJ McCarthy returns, that's going to hurt some things. The offensive line has not come together like we expected it to in Minnesota. But Carson Wentz, who's he going to go to when he's in trouble? It's going to be Justin Jefferson. So weeks 1 through 3, he had a touchdown in week 1, 81 yards in week 2, 5 for 75 in an absolute blowout with Carson Wentz, but he still led yards and targets for the Vikings. So with a unsettled quarterback situation, this might be one of the best times to try and trade for JJ, in my opinion. And it's not going to matter, I think, who the quarterback is long term. He's going to get his. So week 4 versus the Steelers in Ireland, it's kind of like a spotlight game. Volume can kind of normalize a little bit there. But superstar usage, I think he still has a bankable ceiling. And if the owner in your league doesn't believe that he still does, I think that's an opportunity for us to at least go kick some tires, try and get one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. That's it for today. Drop your comments below. I read every single one. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about guys that we should be trading away. We'll see you then.